Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. Tesla is down 1.3% at $170 per share. Markets, Dow Jones down 0.5%. NASDAQ up 0.3%. S&P 500 flat. Russell 2000 down 1%. Nvidia is up 2.9%. Google up 2%. Apple up 1%. Financials are down. That's probably why Dow Jones is down, whereas NASDAQ is up. Oil down 0.5% at $80 per barrel, and the treasury yield is down about 5 basis points across the curve. Any questions, comments, please request to speak. Robert, how are you?
Doing great, man. I just gave 2 separate AI teams long rides in FSD 12.3. News Research is one of them. I had 3 people in the car, and we were talking about the state of AI, the state of FSD. It's fucking insane how good it is now. It's way better than last week.
Tell us more about it. What's better? What's worse, if anything?
It consistently does not make mistakes. It slows down on speed bumps consistently. It goes around potholes. It behaves like a human being. It goes around traffic. It goes through gaps. It just behaves much, much better. So, all right. So with AI, it's the rate of learning that matters. And it's clearly learning at a very fast rate. And we can now see the light at the end of the tunnel here. We can now see that, okay, sometime in the next 12 months, this is going to turn on in Europe. This is going to turn in China. It's going to get approved by all the regulators. It's going to start nagging us less in the next 12 to 18 months. And we're going to start seeing the take-up rate, because it's going to improve people's lives so deeply when they're driving, and they're going to drive their friends around and show it to them. And it's going to start selling vehicles and selling FSD, which is going to increase the profit on Tesla vehicles.
Have you had any disengagements or interventions on 12.3 yet?
Not a single one in 3 rides from San Jose to San Francisco and back. So that's 6 drives, not a single one.
That's amazing. Would you recommend people purchase or subscribe to FSD?
That depends on their financial situation and whether they can get it, whether they can get the $12,000 together. I bought it, 7 years ago. It finally after 7 years, it's getting to what it was promised. And so I think it's worth the $12,000. I'm about to buy a Model Y for my wife, and we're buying it because we keep our cars for 10 years. So, uh, you know, buying it makes sense, and also putting it on the financing of the purchase of the vehicle makes sense for us.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of excitement around 12.3. I'm sure you've seen Omar's videos and yesterday's video as well, where he took Machine and Meta on a ride, and they had a great time, it looks like. And Machine was really impressed. He was really impressed, almost to the point of upgrading his hardware too. Do you think FSD 12.3 will lead to a take rate increase?
I believe it's yes. Maybe not right away because you need to get people to have experience with it. All right, so now we have to start thinking of how do we get more people to have experience with this. And you can see it sometime in the next 12 months, you're going to start seeing trials. I mean, if I was at Tesla now I would start switching my strategy from just trying to get it done to now starting to sell it to people.
How do you think they should go about it?
Trials. Get people to try it on their Tesla. Get people to use it for a couple of months. You get people to use it for a couple of months and see how good it is, then you're gonna wanna own it
Well, they already give
or
3 month
subscribe to it.
trials. They already give three
I
month
know, but it
trials
it
for
it
it.
it never has gotten to the place where I can say it's ready for the average everyday consumer. It's ready for my wife now. Before this, it was not. Now it is.
So she's never used it before, or how
She's
has
very adverse to using cruise control or FSD. She didn't like it before. It was too robotic. It was too inconsistent. It would make mistakes on one of my drives every time on a turn. It fixed that problem. It no longer makes mistakes like that. So it's ready for everyday people. I think everyday people who give it another shot are going to come to the same conclusion. This is ready for everybody, not just the nerds.
interesting? Um, so there's obviously some perception that Elon has been saying this for a long time. Tesla fans have been predicting FSD take rate will increase, and people will flock into FSD for a long time. Why do you think this time is different specifically?
Because it does not make mistakes the same way. Now, could it make a mistake? Sure, but it's completely different behavior than the version I had a week ago. It is way, way, way better. So now it's time to again remind everybody: go try it. Go force yourself to use it for a bit. See how good it is.
All right. Any questions for Robert? Please request to speak. Hey, Robert, I see on your profile, which I have on my YouTube channel right now,
Okay.
that you created an AI newsletter. This
Yeah,
week's newsletter is on AI first era and consumers. Would
I'm
you
the
like to tell
only
us about it?
human who has mapped out the entire AI space. If you go to my lists, you'll see that I've mapped out more than 4,000 AI companies into separate groupings. I've separated out the influencers and the media. I've really done a lot of work on my list to watch the industry. I'm watching 70,000 people in the AI space. Just as the past 2 days, I've been giving rides to AI people, AI pioneers, to get further up to date on the market. And so I'm doing interviews with entrepreneurs and putting those up on video. And I have a newsletter, and I'm doing another book on spatial computing. Um, you know, and yeah, covering the world, just like you are.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I think we have a question for you. Rick Rocks, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Yaman. Hey, Robert, I have a question for you. You said you bought your FSD 7 years ago, and I have a 2017 Model S, and I upgraded my MCU, and I have the 11.4.9. And what happened was, for me, they push out the 224.27, I think, branch as a minor fix. So I'm not able to get the version 12, because version 12 is on 2023 version. So of all the legacy people that still have the FSD, will we get it, or we're not gonna get it?
I would assume the entire fleet gets this at some point. I don't know the rollout plans. I see a lot of people who are getting it in the past 24 hours. So I know it's rolling out to people. I just don't know when it gets to specific vehicles to use. I hope it's soon because it's really, really a huge improvement.
Yeah, thank you. I was tempting to trade it in and transfer the FSD, but man, it's gonna cost me more money. So man,
I mean, a newer vehicle is pretty nice. The new Model 3s, the Model Ys, the Model S's, and the Cybertruck are way better vehicles than what we were able to buy back in 2017. So there is that. But I understand. I turned down my Cybertruck this week because I couldn't afford it. So I get everybody's in a different financial situation and has different needs in their transportation.
yeah, I'm happy with what I have right now. I'm used to just help out the FSD that make mistakes, and it drives me every day. So, but I'm just jealous of what I'm seeing in the video and what you're telling us right now. So,
I know. I was
congratulations, man.
jealous of Omar. He had 12, 12 something for a month or two. I was jealous of him before I got it. It is a real deal. When you do get it, you're going to call up Yaman and go, man, this is real improvement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick Rocks. Robert, I want to ask you some questions about, let's see, I'm on your profile right now, kind of going through it. I like your cover picture, by the way. It's very
Thank you.
creative, unaligned. What's that? Is that a brand name that you created? Unaligned?
Yeah. So I sat next to an AI safety researcher for 10 hours coming home from UK about a year and a half ago. And he was telling me how an AI in theory could go unaligned and go anti-human, do something anti-human, turn off a system or, do something nasty. And so I picked that up as my brand. If in human terms, if you ask, if you go to dictionary.com and look it up, a human that's unaligned is unaligned from any major organization. Well, I don't work with any, I'm not aligned with any major organization or religion or point of view. So I try to keep an open mind when I interview entrepreneurs. And I I'm not aligned to the past either. This is why I was excited by Elon, because he was coming out with products that were innovative and way ahead of the other car companies I was covering back in the 2000s. I had a famous tech blog for a long time covering innovation here in Silicon Valley.
Thank you, Robert. It's always good to have you in this space. Thanks for stopping by today. And we have a question for you from Drew Soul on YouTube Live. He first says, "Can Robert be my cool dad? I want his toys." And then he asks, "Does Robert believe Elon on every 2-week release improvements? After 3 updates, how good will it be?"
I, with Elon, when he says 2 weeks, sometimes that turns into 4 months, right? So we know Elon's sense of timing and dates is not you got to put a little extra on there, but he eventually does get there. And so when he says that the next few versions are going to be much better because he's not compute constrained anymore, I totally believe him. I am hearing that from inside the AI industry that Tesla got a bunch of Nvidia cards and is building out its Dojo computers. So, we're going to start seeing some real AI moves from this company. The Optimus, I'm expecting to see an AI day soon, sometime in the next few months. And we're going to start seeing how fast the Optimus is learning. We're seeing that on the road now. Omar's just joined. Omar's been right. And if you're not watching his videos, you should. He has a real good sense of how fast this thing is learning, how it is improving over time, and where we're about to go. And we're about to see some real change in the AI industry. It's not just Tesla. If you haven't been paying attention to Nvidia this week, they have the GTC conference here in San Jose. They laid down major innovations for the data centers, and that's going to lead to many improvements in the AI industry, not just for Tesla, but for everybody. And we're going to start seeing the AI industry start to make some big moves.
Thank you, Roberts. Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, doing good.
Lincoln, how are you doing?
Good. Are you back to your crappy AirPods?
Is it not good?
It's just not as perfect as normal or as good as it's been. But I'm doing good. FSD's driving me right now, 12.3, and it's really, I'm really enjoying it a lot.
Well, I'm told on YouTube Live that the sound quality is 9 or 10. So maybe it's on your end. I'm not sure. But you said you had 12?
Yeah, 12.3. Do you want to hear my thoughts on it?
No.
Great.
No, tell us.
It's awesome. It's really fascinating to see how it thinks differently. It's like a new personality that I'm getting used to. Where is it struggle? Where does it do well? Well, it's fixed like so many issues that have plagued since I've started using FSD. And that's really awesome. It's it just thinks differently. So it's fixed a ton of issues. It's brought up a couple new issues, but that it doesn't freak me out because it's like, this is kind of like a baby now, and they're just training this, and it's gonna get better really fast. But like the framework, like the smoothness and the steadiness of it feels really good. So I'm loving it, and it's doing stuff that a human would do, like if you have to get over really quick. It used to miss lanes, right? Like a turn, if you had to get over 3 lanes really quick, it would miss it, and now it just like puts the blinker on and boom, moves over. It knows what's doing. Thinking ahead. Yeah, it's really cool. So
Thanks, Lincoln. Robert, how many people do you think are going to be on FSD by the end of the year? Purchase or subscribe?
The take-up rate is what, about 10% of the fleet at this point? So if there's 3.5 million vehicles on the road, the take-up rate is what, 350,000? I would expect the take-up rate by the end of the year to start increasing from 10% to let's say 15%, something even modest. I think that's reachable, and I think that's doable. Of new vehicles, if you're going into a Tesla, I think more and more people are going to that number is going to be higher. So if you're buying a new Cybertruck or a new Model Y or whatever, the take-up rate is going to start going up, because people who have to drive for an hour each way to work, which is like my wife, they're going to start seeing that this is really dramatically going to improve their lives. And so I think you're going to start seeing take-up rates in the 25%, 30% range for new vehicles. And the real question is, when does China and Europe turn on? I have a feeling it'll be next year, but it's coming sometime in the next 12, 18 months. Those two countries are going to come in, and that's going to be a big bucket of new users to the Tesla FSD family.
Omar, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the software obviously has to be as good in those markets as it is here or better. So obviously there's regional differences. We need to make sure the software actually handles those regional differences reasonably well. Then, there's maybe more of a question about, I think in China, people will just eat it up. In Europe, um, I'm not, it's kind of untested waters, but theoretically, people should be just as interested in Europe as they are in the US and China, assuming it works well. So yeah, I definitely do think that the launch of the product in Europe and China will expand the new users a lot. And launching subscription is going to be key to that as well. Right now, it's only in the US. They're working on getting into Canada. But if they had it in China and Europe, then you definitely probably see them cross a million users very quickly.
Do you think the deflation that's going on, the slowdown that's going on in China, going to hinder FSD adoption?
Well, there's weak economies and strong economies. China's kind of recovering from a very large property bubble that's created a deflationary environment. But they're very forward thinking on technology. They tend to adopt new products and technologies like this very quickly. Their EV market is, generally much further ahead in terms of the technologies that are offered than the Western legacy automakers products, strangely. That didn't always used to be the case. So macro factors notwithstanding, I expect the market to have a lot of enthusiasm. To whatever extent there is sort of a macro drag on the economy, that's going to affect Tesla's business too, as we've seen. But at a sort of secular level, I think it's fair to say that the adoption of this technology is going in one direction. It's going and trending towards virtually every new car having it, and consumers really caring about it, not wanting to buy a car without it. And if you look at like the Chinese EV market, for instance, Chinese consumers have been way pickier about, for example, the software on their cars. They don't want to buy Volkswagen cars, Volkswagen EVs, and 50% of Volkswagen's profits used to come from China. So it's a big issue for them. But they're much more discerning about what is a modern high tech car. They want software, they want apps, they want a top notch experience, and they won't buy anything that doesn't have it. So, in a way, they're kind of leading in the digitization of the car and the sort of software defined architecture of the car. And you can see that in the consumer there. So, there's reason to think that the Chinese consumer would probably, I think, care about autonomy more than the average consumer. They're, much more sort of science based and everything there compared to here in the US. So, it's difficult to predict macro. Some people would say, oh, this is going to be some huge thing that China's never going to recover from. Other people would probably say, this is sort of just a little bit of a downturn. They're going to recover from it in time. And we'll have to see where exactly the outcome falls in between that. But you can't control macro. You can only control your products and just hope the macro situation is conducive to actually launching those products successfully.
Robert, what do you think about that question? Do you think Chinese economy will, we actually got some news this morning from Bloomberg, or at least an article, a headline that talked about Tesla reducing production at the Giga Shanghai factory. What are your thoughts on that?
I think this is temporary weakness in the economy there. The China factory also makes vehicles for Canada and Australia and other countries. So it's something to pay attention to. I just saw a report that the insurance registrations for new Tesla vehicles is actually up. So I'm seeing that the market is doing what Omar's laying out. That the Chinese consumer, either they're really, really poor and want a very cheap product, which is why BYD is doing so well. The BYD has a vehicle that costs less than $10,000, and it's a fairly competent vehicle. And or they're the high end customer, and those people are very up to date on FSD and other technologies that add to the experience to be in the vehicle. I, when I visited China, a lot of those people had iPhones, um, and were very up to date on technology. So I would expect Tesla to do well, but I can't control the macro. I don't have a real deep read on the macro.
Omar, what do you think about Tesla trimming output of cars in China amidst slower EV sales growth? The headline of Bloomberg: since mid-March, staff told to work only 5 days a week. U.S. automaker produces Model 3 sedan, Model Y SUV in China. Tesla has reduced electric car production at its plant in China, according to people familiar with the matter, says Bloomberg, amid sluggish growth in new energy vehicle sales and intense competition in the world's biggest automobile market.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, just assuming it's true, obviously, we don't know. Sometimes things get reported incorrectly or whatever, but assuming that it is true, I think it could be a little bit of an encouraging sign that they're choosing not to just cut prices further. Like if they kept production, around 2 million for the year or so and kept prices stable, then they could conceivably see growth in the auto business, notwithstanding FSD, just from increasing the price a little bit and lowering the COGS and keeping volume relatively similar, if not a little bit higher than last year. And I think that's kind of what they're trying to do. They sort of guided in their earnings statement that they're going to expect less growth this year. So I think this year is going to be less about using pricing to try and grow and more about just kind of, okay, we did it. We ripped the band-aid off. We took pricing to where we want it. Now we're going to kind of let things stabilize. And this will be a little bit less of a growth year in terms of auto deliveries. But we kind of stabilize things in preparation for launching a new generation of products at the end of next year that we think is going to sort of drive the next wave of growth. So, it's a tough situation in China, but it's just become kind of this crazy price war, and th- you know, it's just a very kind of depressed situation from capital markets to the property market. It's a it's a weak situation, and you have deflation continuing to sort of put further competitive pressure on these car makers. So I think they're kind of just saying, look, okay, we're done playing this game. We're going to just kind of stabilize prices, and if it means growth is, you know, very little, maybe 20%, maybe less, then so be it.
Omar, do you think that in China, NIO has a new car with a new kind of suspension that smooths out bumps? The Tesla does not have FSD turned on in China yet, so we can't use FSD as a competitive advantage yet. I expect sometime in the next 12 months that FSD will turn on in China and will enthuse the Chinese consumer finally about the technological advantages that Tesla has. How do you see the competitive landscape playing out right short term, and then going into next year when I believe that FSD is going to turn on there?
Well, the Chinese consumer does have autopilot. It's pretty standard lane keeping assist, but it's a pretty good system. So they do have that. They have navigate on autopilot, all that good stuff. But, it's not even almost about like ADAS in the Chinese market right now. So like imagine you're Jiling Wang. and you decided to put all your money into buying this house, right? 60% of Chinese wealth was household wealth, real estate, that type of stuff. So Evergrande comes to you and they say, "Hey, we want to build you a home. So why don't you give us, $1 million or whatever, and we're going to go build you a home. And then once it's ready, you can move in." And you go, "Okay, sure. Here's my $1 million." And they go and they take a bunch of money and they never build you the home. And then you see construction stop because they're going bankrupt. And you go, "What the hell? Like, where's my money? Where's my home?" And they go, "Oh, sorry. Well, we spent all your money and we didn't build a home." And you're pissed off. You're like, "What the fuck?" You just lost your life savings. So you're not really worried about which car has the best ADAS at this point. You're probably not even thinking about buying a car. You're just pissed. And then on top of that, there's like a COVID lockdown. They lock you in. Everybody's business is doing terrible. So, I think the sort of competitive environment in EVs there is bigger than just sort of ADAS. I'm not sure even launching FSD can necessarily cure what's going on there. But in time, everything heals.
What do you think will change that trend in the economy out there? The government has been kind of trying to pump in some money, but
Yeah.
incrementally, and it hasn't helped yet. It hasn't helped so far.
Yeah. What I would do if I were Xi Jinping is try and invite in foreign investment. That's the one thing that could reignite the economy. Now, foreign investment's really been going in the opposite direction. We've been looking at near sourcing as a trend. After the pandemic and the supply chain difficulties, people want to make things closer to home where there's less potential for shipping delays, things getting stuck at the port. There's also been national security concerns, more sort of butting heads with China. There's been, for example, what was that Didi, the Didi IPO, and they just sort of rug pulled everyone and said you can't, do this IPO with a foreign listing, and investors sort of lost their money. So some foreign investment could be helpful, but nobody wants to touch Chinese property, Chinese equity, even Chinese bonds, right? Most of these companies are so indebted, like a lot of them are defaulting. So they've seen a loss of foreign investment on top of all these other problems that are having. So that's one thing I think that could help is say, "Hey, look, China's open for business. Come here, do business here. We're not going to make market conditions unfair. Come invest in China and the Chinese market. We've got all these consumers, da da da." I think that's one thing that could help. Then, you know, government stimulus, assistance, ways to help out, these homeowners maybe. Um, but, it seems like the government really doesn't want to do any sort of Evergrande bailout. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, even the biggest crises resolve themselves in time, right? We had, for example, the great financial crisis or the great recession, as we call it. And a lot of people lost their homes and there was a property bubble. And we eventually recovered through a mixture of fiscal policy, monetary policy, and of people losing their jobs and suffering for a long time. Um, but it's sort of unclear what the extent of this is going to be, what steps the government's going to take. They do have sort of the advantage in China of just having a very centrally controlled government with a lot of state backed corporations. So when they decide they want to do something, they have quite a bit of power to impact the economy through, building, through the work these companies do, and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting that they haven't gone. I mean, and the Federal Reserve went, balls to the wall during COVID. And his government just Nike announced earnings yesterday, and they beat all estimates after hours, and the stock jumped about 5-6%. And then during the call, they said something about Chinese economy, and how the growth is not picking up over there, and the stock turned down 10-11% after that. So clearly, Tesla is not the only company that's being impacted by the slowdown. And I would say maybe even Apple, some of the recent decline in the stock price is probably attributable to the Chinese economy. Robert, what are your thoughts about Apple's stock lately?
Yeah, they're being slammed on two fronts. One is the antitrust lawsuit that's just got announced yesterday. But yeah, the Chinese numbers are down, and that's a huge drain on future profits and sales. The Chinese market is so immense. It's 1.3 billion people. In America, we have 380 million people here. It's such a huge market that if China sneezes, everybody gets sick.
They're not as important as the U.S. economy to the world, right?
I don't agree with you there. American automakers make billions of dollars in China, not just Tesla. I mean, Buicks Chinese love American brands, and if they stop buying American brands for whatever reason, that we feel it here. It might not be as important, but it's a huge market. And when the numbers in China go down, it drags everybody down.
All right. Let's see what else is new today. Oh, Omar, did you see Joe Tagmeyer's pictures about Giga Texas and Model 3 sightings at Giga Texas?
No.
There's
Here, I pinned
300
it at the top.
Cybertrucks, right?
Well, hold on. So the Cybertruck production and Troy is about to publish an article about Cybertruck production as well. So there's a pickup. Joe Tagmeyer also posted yesterday, I pinned at the top, some pictures showing the refreshed Model 3 production out of Giga Texas.
You're rugging a little bit, Yaman.
Just check out the tweet at the top.
Yeah, and Elon responded to that and said, we are now ramping Cybertruck production. We're in the ramp. It's starting to increase numbers. Yeah.
This is a different post. This post is about Model 3 production at Giga Texas.
Oh, sorry. That's interesting. Do you think they're going to be moving a line from Fremont into Giga Texas?
Well, I don't know. I'm asking you guys. Omar, what do you think?
It's possible they could make Model 3 at Giga Texas. It's also possible that they just have some of these in here for testing or something. But yeah, I mean, it does seem to be right there with the outbound vehicles. It's definitely not a Y. So it is curious. It does look like they're being produced there. But I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions. But what are they doing in the outbound lot? I mean, it could be they're just doing some testing there. The employees are working on them or whatever. So that could be an alternate explanation. But it is interesting. That would potentially, add to Model 3 output. But do they even really need more output right now? I mean, I guess Fremont's been having some trouble ramping, but um, I don't know. So we'll have to wait for more news from them. But where there's smoke, there's sometimes fire. And this is a sign they could be starting production of the Model 3 there.
Yeah, that would be huge news, obviously. I'm curious to see as well if Tesla starts production of the upgraded Model 3 at Giga Texas.
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. I wonder if they would use the large structural castings for that Model 3, which we haven't seen before, or they would set up a sort of more traditional Model 3 line there. I would guess they'd almost have to do the castings because I can't imagine them set up everything they had for the old line at Giga Texas where they have such a clean design. So, yeah, definitely interesting. But if I had to put money on it, I'd probably say they're just there for testing, marketing, some other function, and they weren't produced there. But I'd maybe give it a 25% chance they were made there.
I'm going to create a poll on YouTube Live. Let's see what YouTube Live folks have to say about this. And Wes is in the crowd. If he wants to come up and tell us about his opinion on it, he's welcome to do so. Somebody asked Joe Tagline in the replies, do you think the rear and front castings, like Joe said? I don't think so, as the recent Lars and Franz Model 3 video had them state. There were no plans to use castings on this Model 3. I suppose they're just testing these here, but it is interesting there in the outbound lot.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't plan to use castings on this Model 3, then it seems like a lot of work and space to get a line up in Texas. And do they really need more production capacity? Like, I think Fremont, once it's ramped, should be able to probably meet the demand, but maybe not.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Good questions. Good questions. And Troy posted about Cybertruck production at the top of our screens and on YouTube Live as well. He says, here's a VIN chart that shows that Cybertruck production used to look like until February 26th. It's changed now. I calculate Tesla's production using VIN data. My accuracy is 98.7%. I'll tweet my final estimate on March 31. Tesla will release the actual numbers on April 2. And you can see the red dots kind of getting a steeper slope. What do you think about that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem like production's really ramping. You can see it in the photos. Elon's confirming it on X. So it's great to see people actually getting to take delivery. I remember when we were just so excited to hear from one person, oh my God, you've ridden in a Cybertruck. Now, a lot of people in these spaces have them in their garage or in their driveway. And I have to say, it's been a hit. The launch has gone off pretty well. Pretty much everybody who has it loves it. And, you see all these celebrities, people are just turning and looking at it wherever they go. Pretty much everyone's just blown away by it. So I think they knocked it out of the park. We kind of forget that that's not really for granted. Most vehicles that launch every year are not hits. people kind of just shrug and go, okay, new Hyundai Sonata, great. But it's not every day that you have a vehicle enter the market that's just instantly an icon. So it seems like they really knocked it out of the park with the launch. I mean, not everything's been perfect. There have been, some minor quality and fit and finish issues. We had, for example, Marquez's truck had some issue with the door stopper or something, and apparently 15 trucks were affected. And, of course, the haters will mock these sort of minor things, but really everybody sort of just loves the product. And the fit and finish and quality is overall pretty good for mine. Um, like I think the panels just kind of are just these sheets of metal. So it kind of just is the way it is. But yeah, I think overall they're doing a pretty good job of these initial units. They'll continue to dial in, I think, these minor issues as they ramp. That's, I think, the key thing to watch is not only can they ramp, but can they ramp while maintaining a really high quality product? I mean, they're selling this thing for 100K. People have an expectation of a premium product without any sort of defects or issues or even, minor sort of visual i- issues. So it's a very sort of tough bar for them to go to, especially with the product that's this new. And people are really paying to be one of the first, and they expect it to be great. So overall, I think people have been pretty impressed by how refined the vehicle is. But it's going to be key to see if they can ramp and continue to just deliver a really consistent product.
Any questions, comments? Please speak. I see Joa in the audience if he wants to come up and give us an update on parts orders or aftermarket parts orders. I would love to get an update about that. In the meantime, Robert, what do you think was the biggest news that came out of the NVIDIA event?
Robots. Everybody is hyped up about humanoid robots. There was like 10 humanoid robots on stage with Jensen. And the other thing is just the scale of NVIDIA. I remember going to GTC when it was just a small little event after or around GDC. Now it's a major, major event. They filled the entire basketball stadium or the stadium over there. Every seat was taken, and Jensen is now a legitimate rock star on the level of Elon. So you're going to start seeing, I think, a lot of interesting things coming out of NVIDIA's ecosystem. Robots are the biggest one that has the AI's world's attention. I met with News Research, which is building a whole bunch of AI models, and that's all we talked about this morning. Pretty much was how likely is it that we're going to have a humanoid robot in our homes when, what kind of skills is it going to have? How is it going to be interacted with? And, there's a lot of excitement. I think it's still a few years away, but it'll be interesting to see what Tesla and Nvidia do in terms of humanoid robots and how they go to war.
Hey, Lincoln, how was my sound quality now?
Say something else.
Something else.
It's not great.
Should be okay. I think you're making you're making stuff up right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's better. That's definitely better.
Yeah, whatever. Robert, do you think Nvidia stock and other chip makers stocks are overvalued at this time?
No.
Do you own any?
No, and that was a huge mistake on my behalf. I put a lot of money into Tesla, which I don't think is a big mistake. I have a lot of other stocks. I have Microsoft, which has been doing well because it's really a leader in the AI space. I have Amazon. They have 750,000 robots in their warehouses. So they're going to be a player. I wish I'd bought some Nvidia. That was a mistake. My brother did though, and he's done very well.
And you think it's too late to buy some? I mean, Omar is still buying.
I, Nvidia is not going anywhere. They are the dramatic leader. Every AI person wants one of those new data centers they just announced. And companies like Tesla or Amazon, who are building data centers with a lot of Nvidia cards, are going to have to continue to remain relevant, i.e., they're going to have to continue to upgrade their A100s to H100s or to the newer models that Nvidia is coming out with. There is going to be increased demand on AI because the business market still has not really dove into AI yet. Only 1% of CTOs have actually deployed AI systems, according to one research report I just saw. And I think that's pretty accurate. The business world is going to come into AI in the next 18 months. And so you're going to see increased profits because those businesses who are building models are going to need to buy NVIDIA cards to keep up to date and compete with, the rest of the world. So I think it is an expensive stock. My money manager does not like me putting money into Nvidia right now because it's very expensive. But I see still a lot of upside and very little downside to it.
Omar?
So on March 19th, I purchased 10 shares of Nvidia at $884. And now it's at $944. So, whether it's expensive or cheap depends on what their future holds. So if this ends up being a blip and their data center revenue just collapses, then yes, they are very expensive because they're being valued on an aberration. But if it turns out that their data center actually continues to grow or sustains at this level, then the business actually is still very cheap because the earnings are exploding. So it's really interesting, Elon's comments really that recently that they're no longer constrained on training compute. He's made like this comment a few times. I think it's a really interesting comment because he says our primary constraint on solving FSD is training compute. And now he's saying, okay, I think we figured out the training compute. So what does he mean by this? We're no longer constrained on training compute. Either he means A, the NVIDIA cluster they brought up is so good that they're no longer constrained on training compute and that they're continuing to get supply of NVIDIA chips. I mean, you can imagine they installed these H100s. Now they can install some B200s and install 15,000 of those and not only double their training compute capacity, but actually, because the new Blackwell chips are better, more than double it, right? And continue to expand. So that could be one answer is that, Jensen is just able to supply them with more chips now and they're able to get what they need and they're happy with Nvidia. And so you just sort of think of the value of Tesla at FSD. I think it's kind of beyond people's imagination what they can do. They can spend, then they said they plan to spend more than $2 billion on training compute this year. So they can spend billions of dollars and know that they're going to generate even more than that from the models the training compute produces. So it's really fascinating. And then, so the other possibility is that they actually got Dojo to become much more useful and that they scaled production of Dojo and that this actually solved their training compute problem. Or it could be some combination of both. So I'm interested to know more details about why does he feel the training compute constraint is alleviating? Is it because NVIDIA is able to deliver more chips and the market is just easing? Is it because Tesla's able to now run Dojo in production and handle most of the training of V12 on Dojo? And, they're scaling that? Or is it, a little bit of both? If he's not just blowing smoke up our ass, and if they really are making progress on scaling training compute, I mean, this is the number one most important thing that we need to solve FSD is just more training compute and more data.
I just want to say thank you to Steven, who just contributed $5 on YouTube Live. Thank you, Steven. And we have Joseph coming up as well. Interesting thoughts, Omar. Thank you very much for sharing. Do you guys see Joseph as a speaker?
Not yet.
He's having some difficulty. I'm not sure what's going on. Robert, I see you reposted Diego's Nvidia's new 950 gigabyte per second is cool. Apple gives you 800 gigabytes per second with the M2 Ultra chip. Why is memory bandwidth so important in machine learning? Can you tell us about that thread?
A little bit over my pay grade, but the people who are building AI systems say it's the amount of RAM that lets them build more complex models. For instance, your Apple M1, M2 processor has a huge amount of RAM available to it. And that's going to let it run a AI inferencing system that's very complex and at a decent amount of speed. I don't know that I can go into more than that. We should have somebody who's really a technical person who is building that. In fact, I'm interviewing like Bindu, who's running Abacus AI, and I'll probably ask her that kind of question next week.
Thank you, Robert. Omar, Matt Stanko says in YouTube live chat, maybe Tesla was able to lead some additional compute from someone. Do you think that's possible?
Able to lease additional compute from someone?
Right.
Well, this is sort of the issue with training compute is like, if you could just borrow a bunch of training compute, like, hey, let's use a little from Amazon, let's use a little from Google, then it'd be relatively easy. But we're talking about millions of videos here, right? So, first of all, just the data source for this is like petabytes, exabytes, whatever bytes, like the biggest. I don't know how big it is, but it's fucking big. Okay. So all these videos, right? And all of them need to be put into the training chips so that they can train on them, right? So you need a really big data store. You need a really fast interconnect, right? Because think about it. Let's say you got the fastest H100, but then you got this video and it's like, you know, 500 megabytes or a gigabyte or whatever, and you need to copy that video from your data store and you have to copy it to the training chip, then your bottleneck actually becomes the data transfer, right? Because you have to pull the data out of the hard drive. So you want to make sure they're super fast solid state drives. And like Nvidia will typically sell you their InfiniBand networking, which is even, better than Ethernet theoretically, and just makes everything super fast. So you really want everything to be in one place is what I'm saying. You can't really spread it out multiple places. They need to be close together to really make that training process right. Think about it. You're cycling all these different videos in the blink of an eye. Video needs to come in, train on it, video goes out, new video comes in, and this is just happening at like insane speed. So you kind of need the compute to be centrally located. That makes it kind of difficult to borrow people or to use the cloud, but you can augment your training capacity with the cloud. And that type of thing, right? So if you wanted to do some trial training runs or something, you could possibly use Amazon or Google Cloud, and I'm sure they're doing some of that too, giving their engineers access to some cloud resources to use. But for the main training runs that they do on their full data set, they're really going to want it to be happening within their own facility.
Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. Any questions, comments? Please request to speak. I see car dealership guys posting that inventory in the industry climbing. Days on lot for new cars is now up 45% year over year, he says. March 2024, 85 days for new cars and 53 days for used cars. Interesting. Charlie Balela also posted today about used car values potentially pressuring new car prices, but Tesla is increasing prices on April 1st, right, Omar?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we saw Stellantis laying off 400 people in the US, according to a Wall Street Journal article. Layoffs are the global automaker's third reduction in the past year in the US.
Yeah, inventories are very high. It's a much tougher car market than it was a couple years ago. But I think Tesla realized that ultimately $1,000 doesn't really matter to the Tesla buyer. So how many times can we raise the price and people still buy it? Let's see. So let's just raise it a little. You can always just drop it $1,000 again, find the sweet spot. But yeah, I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference to demand. It's a good sort of demand driver to order before the price goes up. But are you going to see a dramatic drop off in Model Y demand because it's 36,000 instead of 35,000? No, I don't think so.
I see you got a software update on your Cybertruck. What changed?
Well, I got auto wipers, which is great. So before the Cybertruck had no auto wipers. Now it's got auto wipers. They added a couple of other things. You can do a one-time charge limit. You can now have Sentry mode actually hook up to the trailer and detect if anyone tries to detach the trailer. So some good improvements, nothing really earth-shattering there. I'm really looking forward to autopilot coming to the Cybertruck. That's going to be the big software update. But, seems like sort of minor bug fixes and stuff. I was seeing a little bit of an issue where my Cybertruck was having a little more phantom drain than you would expect. So I would charge it to 80% and it's just sitting there. It's still plugged into the charger and it's 78% or whatever. And I'll see if this software update fixes that. That's kind of one bug that I'm hoping they'll fix. But yeah, just kind of early days. So a few new features, software bug fixes. Nothing too earth shattering.
Is the auto wiper performance any different on Cybertruck than your other Teslas?
It hasn't rained yet, so I'm not sure. But it's supposed to rain later today, so maybe I'll find out and let you know.
Any other questions, comments? Please request to speak. Hey, Robert, did you return your Apple Vision Pro? Are you using it?
No, I still have it. It's a great device. It's just heavy.
Yeah, I kind of want to get another one.
It's a great
What do you
accessory for superchargers because you can sit there for 20 minutes working on big, huge screens, much better screen than it is built into your Tesla.
What do you use it for?
All sorts of things from watching movies, but usually I'm watching X.com in it. QuickTech or X Pro is amazing in it. You can go to the beach and plug into your Tesla and be working on a big ass screen. It's awesome.
Do you see
Hey,
Neuralink?
Yaman, have you tried 12.3 yet? Oh, sorry.
What's that?
Do you see Neuralink competing with Apple Vision Pro in the future?
Yeah, 20 years from now, sure. Yes. Most
20
people are
years.
not gonna choose to get a surgery to get the same kind of feature you can get in a Vision Pro today.
Omar, what do you think? Do you think it's going to take 20 years for Neuralink to start competing with Apple Vision Pro?
I don't know. We're approaching a singularity, you know? So it's difficult to see what happens at the end of it. Could you have asked someone in pre-industrial England to imagine what the effects of the Industrial Revolution would be? Probably not. So, like every year we have more training compute added. So the chips get better every year. Oh, hey, we figured out how to make the chip twice as fast, 4 times as fast, and we make more of them. And, Moore's law just says every couple years, the amount of compute you can fit will just continue to increase. So the cost of compute essentially continues to fall. So the cost of compute falls. We keep making better chips. We keep adding more of them. We're adding all this training compute. And you've got the internet, people from all over the world are generating all this data that reflects our thoughts, our feelings, how we think. And we're training these models. These models start to be able to generate code, right? Now all the coders are using these models to help them code faster. They're getting more done. Then you see some of these models like Devin. It then gets to the point where the thing starts to be able to improve itself. And then, okay, now the thing's improving itself. You've got compute just increasing. It starts making itself better. It starts making itself able to learn more efficiently. And you just sort of take off at some point. It's difficult to really imagine, I think, what the world looks like beyond that.
Robert?
The demo we saw of Neuralink this week was very, very impressive, but the Vision Pro does that today for $3,500 without cutting open your head and putting a bunch of wires on your brain. And of course, none of us can get a Neuralink unless you're in line for one, which is you got to be paralyzed or have some sort of brain issue that would get you in line for that. Also in front of you is a pair of 4 to 4.5K Sony chips that are really freaking beautiful. This is why watching a movie in the Vision Pro or a concert is really cool. You're not going to have that capability for a while on Neuralink. Elon has announced that they're going to start doing vision kind of features, but he admits that it's going to be very low resolution for a while. So even if you were in line for a Neuralink, even if you had a Neuralink, you can't have the same capabilities as a Vision Pro. And you're right, Vision Pro is heavy and expensive today. And we're expecting, I've had people come to my house from like Loomis, which makes the waveguides for future glasses. And we know the glasses are about to get lighter and cheaper and much more capable. So in the next few years, you're going to see a lot of change coming for the consumer, whether it's Apple bringing it to you or Mark Zuckerberg bringing it to you. It's coming. And that's why I say 20 years from now, okay, I get that I'm going to be jacked in and get the same kind of capabilities. with more, because if you can hook directly to your brain, the internet, you can communicate faster than going through a external device. In theory, that makes a lot of sense to me. So 20 years from now, my kids, yeah, I think Neuralink is a major competitor to an Apple or a Meta, but it's hard
I
to see
definitely
where it
didn't
is
think
today.
I definitely didn't think that they would have a human actually able to control a computer with their mind today. I didn't think it would happen that fast.
When I first saw autonomous cars at Stanford like 15 years ago, they couldn't even drive across the desert in a straight line without any chaos around it. I didn't think I was going to have a self-driving car in my garage in my lifetime, and here we are. So it is hard to predict dates and time and breakthroughs, and maybe there's a breakthrough that comes out that I'm not aware of yet. There's a lot of companies investing in these technologies, so we might have a breakthrough. It's just right now it's hard to imagine that I'm going to have a Neuralink anytime soon. Exciting as it
Yeah.
is, I
I
mean,
mean, I
it's
don't really want one
exciting
right now,
technology.
but when I'm in my 70s and my 80s, could be pretty cool.
It might help fix your brain if you have dementia or Parkinson's or a spinal injury of some kind, right? I mean, if you are like that guy we saw and you can't walk or move your arms or legs, I want a Neuralink immediately if I was in that situation.
Ray
So
Kurzweil says you'll be able to scan your brain and copy your consciousness into a computer. So if you want to survive in some form after your physical body dies, you could have a trust or something like that and make sure you continue to run it, after your death, I guess, until the computer gets shut down or the universe ends, I guess. So it's kind of an interesting idea. What if we could just pull up Steve Jobs at any time? And maybe, it doesn't perfectly simulate his consciousness, but maybe, even just some approximation of it. We could ask him, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think of this new iPhone?" And he goes, "This sucks. Think of something new." What would that world look like? Would it make things better in some ways if we could preserve the wisdom of generations before? Or would it sort of ossify us in sort of the thinking of their time? What if you could keep your parents around in some form? Ask them questions, that sort of thing.
I've been recommending to all my family and friends, shoot more video, because when you're old and you have video of your parents or your loved ones, you're going to be able to talk with them a little bit more. You're going to be able to experience them in 3D. You're going to be able to relive your memories in a whole new way. And it does help your brain. When you talk to Skip Rizzo down at USC, he does research with people who have PTSD and dementia and other kinds of brain problems. One of the tricks he does is show a family, a childhood picture to that person, and they come alive. They remember, their brain actually reconnects itself a little bit because of that. So having video of yourself is going to be real important. And you're already seeing companies like Luma AI where you can throw a video into it and it kicks out a 3D scene. So you can just take that a little bit further, a little bit further. You're going to be able to do things with your videos in the future that you just can't even imagine today. So definitely shoot more videos of your loved ones. It'll be real important to you in 20, 30 years when you're in the old folks home with Omar and me.
Robert, thank you for all that insight. So since you don't expect Neuralink to compete with Apple, Apple Vision anytime soon. Do you have more Apple stock than Tesla stock today, or if you want to share,
No,
if you
I
could,
have more Tesla. I think Tesla is the aggressive, much more interesting company from an AI standpoint. Their AI is learning faster. I see the robot, the Optimus, as being the real competitor for Apple. Because if you had a little dude in your house and you could talk to the little dude or the little woman, i.e., your little robot, and you could clean your toilets and fold your laundry and wash your dishes and entertain you. Are you using your iPhone as much? I don't believe you are. I believe you're using your robot more and more to entertain yourself, play games with you, maybe even play some ping pong with you, that kind of thing. So I see the robot, and this is why when you get AI people together and you go to a conference like Nvidia's thing this week, that's why robots have us dreaming of a new world in a whole new way. And so I see the robot as being much more short-term competitive. Neuralink, yeah, real important work to do. And I think, 20 years from now, it's very possible that a Neuralink is much more competitive uh, directly with an Apple than it is today. But I think the next decade, the real competition is going to be the robot.
Yeah, if you have a robot, you don't really need a phone. Your robot can just do it for you. You can talk to your robot, you can tell it what you want, and it eliminates a lot of the use cases use a phone for today. Instead of taking a selfie, hey robot, take a picture of me. Instead of, looking up what time or what the directions are somewhere, you just tell the robot to do it for you. Hey, look up what time the store closes and send the destination to my car. Anything you could do on your phone. These sort of conversational AI agents and robots will probably just do for us. And it'll be a lot easier than having to figure out what buttons to push and what apps to download ourselves.
And in such a world, if you have a pair of lightweight glasses that does augmented reality on, you're a robot. And you can dress up your Optimus robot, right? And interact with your Optimus robot in a whole new way. If the Optimus robot needs to show you something in your glasses, it's going to show you a screen in the middle of the air. This is this is why I would say go to the Apple Store and get the demo so you understand how deeply impactful this new technology could be if it was lightweight. And
Yeah.
lightweight is coming. It's just, a few years out.
Yeah, I do agree with Robert that it probably is the computing interface of the future. A pair of glasses and maybe a watch. And that's all you need, especially with these AI agents. Just simply talking to them, they can execute any action for you. Much simpler than you pulling out your phone and fiddling at it and staring at it, and you fall in a hole because you weren't looking at where you were going. And I think obviously the Apple Vision Pro is sort of clunky, it's expensive. That's kind of why I returned it. It was just sort of hard to justify, but it was really cool. If it was a lightweight and comfortable form factor, and we may be quite a bit of ways from that, but yeah, I could see it being a phone replacement at some point if they followed through with it.
at what point?
At the point that it looks like a pair of glasses, it feels like a pair of glasses. It doesn't feel that much heavier on your face. It's acceptable, and it gets acceptable battery life. So that could be quite a ways away. It could potentially be 5 to 10 years away, even.
Around the same time as robotaxi is starting to really become ubiquitous around the world, and around the same time as the Optimus is starting to appear in our world at some scale. This is a new world that's coming to us, and this is exciting to me because it's going to lead to a place where It's much more entertaining, much more educational, much easier to build things, much easier to run your business with it, right? Then we're into a world of abundance and maybe some short-term problems of jobs. But it's an exciting world to think through, and it's an exciting world to make some investment bets in. If you're investing for 10 years, you're investing in this world.
Omar, do you have any Apple stock? Are you selling it because Optimus is coming?
No. I mean, there's some troubling signs from Apple, but I mean, like, they're Apple, you know? When am I going to stop using all their products? Not now. They do seem to have lost some vision for the future of their company, but I'm so locked into their ecosystem. And, I use the AirPods, I listen to the music. It's great. I'm very happy with it. I'm not going to change it. So, a lot of these positions I have that are like my largest positions, they started as pretty small positions. And they actually, ballooned to like 25-30% of my portfolio. And then I just kept them there, so it's always better to just hold something. If you've got a great company, don't worry about when it's going to go up or when it's going to go down. Just keep it. And there's some of these companies that are just sort of growth drivers, right? I mean, AI poses a lot of risk to Apple. They said, oh, privacy, we don't store your data. Well, turns out you need that data to train cutting edge AI models. So maybe that strategy wasn't so smart after all. Made for some good ads though. But so there's some risks. I'm evaluating it. I could sell it, which is something I might not have said, even just a few years ago. Every company does have its sort of day, and then it has sort of a decline sometimes, but I'm cautiously holding my Apple shares for now.
New series coming in June, a new multi-model Siri, completely rebuilt. Does that interest you? Because it sure interests me because Siri sucks right now.
I mean, what Apple does is they take technology. They're not the first to do it. They just take the technology after everyone else already figured it out and launched awkwardly. They take the technology, they polish it off, they make it a nice experience for your average consumer who's not obsessing over the details of, you know, DNS and all these old technical details or whatever. And they just make a product and ordinary people use it. So if they had like a really great Siri 2.0, I mean, I think personally they should just kill the name Siri at this point, but they may have too
There,
much
I
invested in it.
disagree. I disagree with you there. I think they
But
just need to improve Siri so it actually works. I mean, the other night I was at dinner and I pulled out my phone and said, "Hey Siri, take me back to my car." It couldn't do it. "Hey Siri, take me back to my parked car." It did it just fine. So it knew where my car was, but it's inflexible. It's AI 1.0. We know the problems. The founders of Siri have detailed them to me.
right,
But
it's
we're
not an
soon going to
LLM.
get we're soon going to get an LLM based system that's going to be at least able to fix that kind of problem.
Yeah, so if they make it better, they could actually make probably billions of dollars from AI. But the execution is kind of yet to be proven. But they do have a history of just taking technologies that exist, making a nicer version of it, and taking it to mass market adoption, often in a way that other companies can't or won't. Then there's the whole antitrust thing too. That's another thing to keep an eye on.
In America, we like our monopolies on the way up, but when they get too powerful, we like to tear them down. The patent system really is a monopoly system. When you get issued a patent, you have a monopoly for 17 years to prove out that idea and take advantage of it. But when you get too big, and Apple is what, the most profitable company in the world now, you attract a lot more of this kind of regulatory breakup kind of attitude.
What do you think is going to come of this DOJ lawsuit?
Slap on the hand. What happened to Microsoft, right? Microsoft was dramatically powerful in the late 1990s, and they got a little slap on their hand. It did slow them down, though. I saw that internally when I was a strategist at Microsoft. And Apple has to be a different kind of company now. The other thing I'm hearing from developers about the Vision Pro is they're holding developers back. For instance, there's a lot of developers who want to do stuff with the eye sensor. The eye sensor is really good. I type with my eyes now in the Vision Pro, but they don't open that up to developers because Apple really doesn't want to freak out the customer. And the technologies that are on your face when you are wearing the Vision Pro are very freaky technologies. For instance, it's building if you're using the new FaceTime, it's building a new digital twin of your face. And it has cameras looking at your eyes, looking at your eyebrows, looking at your mouth, looking at your tongue, right? If you stick out your tongue at Gammon on a new FaceTime call, it's not you that's sticking out your tongue. It's your digital twin that's sticking out your tongue. Your face is actually puppeting a new kind of digital twin. And that is very, very freaky technology to people because, what do you mean there's a camera or this sensor looking at my face, understanding my emotion? I was talking to another guy who's building an emotion company, Hume AI, which is going to listen to the microphone and watch the camera to know what kind of, are you angry today? Are you happy? Are you emoting in a certain way? And it can build metadata of that and do things with it, right? So if you're angry, it can it can change the environment around you to try to calm you down and try to play with you even. Um, this is very, very freaky technology to most people who have not really considered the pros of this technology. And Apple's holding back. That's what Apple does. It's like they think deeply about the customer journey, and they know most people are not ready for that kind of technology or that kind of interaction style. And so it'll be interesting to see how does Apple open up new capabilities on its new platforms for developers to use over time. This is what makes WWDC this year very, very interesting. That's Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference in June, which is where the new series is going to come out. New Siri, by the way, Apple has access to your sensors. So the new Siri that comes out should be able to know what you're holding, what you're touching, what you're eating, what you're looking at, what you're gesturing towards, what you're moving towards, what you're moving away from. And it should be able to interact with you based on those things. That's capabilities that OpenAI or Anthropic or Perplexity don't have access to and cannot compete with until they get a pair of glasses on your face that have the same capabilities. So I expect Apple's going to have some innovation to lay down in June to show a new AI world that can help the user become a superhuman. And we'll see how open they are about it and how interactive they are with it. It sounds like they're doing a deal with Google to take prompts from Siri and shove them over to Google to get a deeper answer from Google's new Gemini and bring it back into the glasses or into the headset or onto your phone. It'll be interesting to see how they use these new capabilities and how they open them up to third-party developers.
You know, I'm the biggest Apple fan. I have pretty much all of their products except for the Vision Pro. But I kind of even want to buy a Vision Pro, even though it's useless. That's how big of an Apple fan I am. But just looking at the company, you know, fundamentally, it's sort of a dying company in many ways, as crazy as that sounds. And, of course, I don't mean they're going to die financially. They have a mountain of cash. But, just the other day, I was in my bathroom and I was listening to some music on my home pods that I have in my room, in my bathroom. And I was thinking maybe they could launch a feature where they'd make it easier to do this. And then I realized they're not really going to ship a feature like that. They don't ship these kinds of features that just delight you anymore. Like, you remember those Steve Jobs demos, and he'd come out and he'd be like, look at this and look at what he could do. And people would just gasp. There'd be these cool features, and they'd just always be going the extra mile to think of new technologies that are just so cool and just delight you and that you'd want to just show everyone about. Now they're like the power company, right? When they first came up with electricity, I'm sure it was amazing. Everyone was stoked. They're like, "Oh my god, electricity. This is like incredible." And there were some really smart people at the power company. They really, did some great innovations and built the power grid. Now nobody's excited about it. It's like, okay, I'm paying for power. They deliver electricity. It's still, obviously incredible, but people are kind of over it. And it's kind of the same thing with Apple. They're kind of doing these sustaining innovations. So Apple was always killing themselves. They were always killing off their product. Do you remember when Steve Jobs came on stage and he said, "This is the iPod mini. It's the best-selling MP3 player in the world. And today we're going to kill it. And we're going to launch the iPod Nano." And then eventually killing off their iPod line and doing their phone. Most executives wouldn't think like that. They wouldn't think, okay, let's kill off the product line. They'd be thinking, okay, how can we sell phones and iPods? And they'd end up making a crappy phone and a crappy iPod, and neither of them would sell. But they said, you know what? We're going to just kill off the iPod business, and nobody buys an iPod anymore. Everybody buys an iPhone. So it takes a lot of courage to say, okay, the iPod's is huge business for us, and we don't know if people are going to like the iPhone. It could flop, but we're going to put all our weight behind this, and we think this is the future, and we think this is actually what's going to kill our previous generation of products. So for Apple, what is it? What is that next generation of products?
The Vision Pro kills a laptop.
That's what they're saying is the next generation of their products, but it's a little bit of a
I don't
flaw.
carry a laptop anymore. My Vision Pro, I carry it in my Tesla everywhere, and I work in my Vision Pro. It's too heavy for normal people. It's painful to use. I'll admit that. It's an early adopter
For
product
me,
right now.
it definitely, for me to not want it, I feel like is a pretty strong statement because I usually want everything they make. And for me with my Vision Pro, I had to have my MacBook Pro too. So here I am with a $3,500 Vision
Did
Pro on my
you?
face.
Why?
I've
Why do
got a
you?
$3,500 MacBook Pro M3, and I've got a $7,000 setup to edit a simple video of my car driving around. And I just look at myself in the mirror and I go, this is fucking ridiculous what I'm doing right now.
Yeah,
So that's kind of why I returned it. But there's no Final Cut Pro for Vision Pro. You have to kind of run it off the laptop.
yeah.
And I did kind of like not having to hunch over the computer. You can kind of stand up and make the screen big, and it is kind of cool, but it's also a little bit silly. Like, the technology's not quite there, and I'm just doing it because it's cool, right? So I'd find myself like putting this thing on, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work using this thing, but it just, I'd find myself just saying, why am I wearing this? This is kind of uncomfortable. Am I really gaining all that much when I could just take it off and use Final Cut on the laptop without having this thing on my head? And then there's a cord hanging and there's a battery in your pocket. I'm like feeling like a cyborg.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think they've got something here with the Vision OS. Like, I would definitely be interested in future generations of the product that were more comfortable, were more lightweight. I mean, even the Meta Quest 3, I think, is easier to have on you than the Vision Pro. So, future generations, if they continue iterating,
But MetaQuest Pro has even less integration with your Apple ecosystem. At least you can
yeah,
AirPlay your Mac Pro into the headset.
the integration's
You're
definitely
hitting
good.
something though, because I told all my family and friends not to buy this device. It's just not ready for consumer. This is really a developer device. To get developers like at Adobe to build Final Cut Pro for it. And we need a much better developer push. And this is something that I think Apple's been weak on the Vision Pro, that they lost a lot of developer um, excitement and trust. Uh, and they didn't do a good job of at Microsoft, we used to call this the evangelism group that would evangelize and work with developers to get software built for a new kind of Windows, for instance. And here we have a new operating system, a new operating environment. Well, it is light on apps and things to do with it. Even concerts or movies. Okay, they have 150 movies that are in 3D, but that's not really what the magic is here. The Alicia Keys concert that you get to see, or the dinosaurs experience that you get to see, those get close to the magic of augmented reality. And we just don't have enough examples of those things. So I think you're right on point that Apple has to step up the game and get developers much more excited about building for this series of devices. A second device, by the way, is coming next Christmas, which will be lighter weight and be lower cost and have a lot more GPU. That's when I've been watching it. I've been sharing things called Metaverse 2.0, which is a photorealistic 3D experience, a whole bunch of new technologies that are about to ship. That's when that shows up. There's no fitness service on this thing. Why? Because Apple doesn't really want consumers to buy this device. When you talk to Apple executives, they're like, we only want consumers to go and get the demo. We don't really want you to buy this thing. We want developers to buy it because we need developers to build the software for the whole family of devices that's about to come over the next few years. So I think you're right on point, Almar, that this first device is, and we probably had the same kind of complaints about the first Macintosh. The first Macintosh had what, 128K of RAM? It couldn't run shit. There was no software. There was no desktop publishing on the first Macintosh. It was only rich people who went and bought that first Macintosh, right? And even this first iPhone. The first iPhone had no apps on it, had no app store, had a shitty camera, had shitty radios, it had a small little dinky screen, right? And cost $700, which was very expensive for the day. And
I mean, the iPhone was an instant hit. From
I
the
know
first
because
one, I bought
because
it, I showed it to everybody. They said,
I was first in
wow, I
line at
need
the
to get
Palo
one of
Alto
these things.
store, right? But I had a whole bunch of Nokia phones, and Nokia had a shitty OS that was really hard to surf the web with. And the Apple comes out with a web browser on an iPhone that's like, whoa, that's a lot easier to use. But it still had a lot of problems. People forget about the problems of the 1.0 device, right?
My point is, what is the vision for the future of the company? A lot of people would say Vision OS. Look, this shows that they're still thinking about how to take computing to the next level, how to kill their products, but it's a little bit of a flop. So they need to either really improve their execution, or it's a big question mark. What's the future of the platform? Then they spent 10 billion on Apple Car. That literally got nowhere.
I heard more. By the
Yeah,
way,
wow.
the Apple Car, there was a whole bunch of teams developing all sorts of augmented reality experiences for the car, for the windows, for the dash. That work can still work in the future on future Vision Pros. And keep in mind, we're talking about FSD 12.3. It's autonomous cars are starting to really happen, right? We can all now see, particularly those of us in the Tesla community, can see we're going to have an autonomous car where we're going to be able to sleep in the car or watch a movie or play a new kind of game. Well, that's a great place for a new kind of Vision Pro glasses, but we need to get there. We need Apple to get there. You get the device lighter, cheaper, more capable, and get a lot more things to do in the glasses. Because if there's not enough things to do, Zuckerberg's going to come out with the same kind of product. He's spending $40 billion on custom silicon to build a new kind of AI-driven glasses, and he's going to be competitive, right? So in 5 years, when we're in our Tesla Cybertruck and it's self-driving and we're going on a road trip, do we buy a pair of Zuckerberg glasses? Do we buy a pair of Tesla glasses? Tesla could come out with a new kind of device, particularly one that has Neuralink style sensors built into it, because there's a lot of things Neuralink could do without putting chip inside your head. I have a device from a company called NextMind, which puts a bunch of sensors on the back of your head and does some of what they demonstrated this week with Neuralink. So Tesla could come in with a very disruptive new piece of consumer electronics gear that's designed for using in the autonomous vehicle to give you new kind of movie theater, new kind of video game capabilities, new kind of education capabilities, right? And would be very attractive to people. Apple has to get there, and if they don't, you're right. The market share of Apple does not matter to me at all. I told Nokia's CEO that the day that the first iPhone came out. I don't give a fuck that you have 100% market share around the world. It's not important. What matters is relevance. And what we're talking about right now is the relevance of Apple is a little weak right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the last time.
Robert Gidded, man, you are on this topic. If you all are enjoying this conversation, excellent conversation, guys. This conversation is only possible. This space is only possible to be hosted daily for 2 hours and counting now because of the patrons. Thank you, Alphabet, for upgrading your membership, and Nikitiki for joining the Tesla tier. If you'd like to join that group, the link is at the top of your screens. Omar, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't really remember the last time Apple came out with a hit product, a hit new
AirPod
product.
Pros, they're pretty hit.
That's not exactly new.
Watch is pretty hit.
The watch and the AirPods were hit new products when they came out, many years ago, really, at this point. So yeah, when, when was the last big hit new product? Not people upgrading, okay, my MacBook's old, let me get a new MacBook. My iPhone's old, let me get the new iPhone,
Do you
whatever they
remember
have today.
Do you
But
remember
something,
Apple Newton?
genuinely new where people are like, oh my God, the iPhone's got this new feature. We got to have it. It's been a while.
Do you remember the Apple Newton?
Yes.
The Newton came out a decade before the iPhone and really laid the groundwork for Apple to get into the music device and then later the phone. And the first Newton was sort of like the Vision Pro. It didn't quite hit with people. It was a little hard to use. It was a little too big. The screen wasn't really attractive. The handwriting style was a pain in the ass to use. It was a little dorky. but it really did set up the company for introducing a series of products over the next decade that made Apple today what Apple is. And I think we're in the same place with the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro, it is the future. That's you know being able to turn your world into a 3D environment where you can work on your skin, in the air, on the wall, and change all that to be Yosemite National Park if you wanted to, or a video game, or like I take it in my kitchen and I start looking at the stars with one of the apps. Right, all around me is space, is the telescope, and it's like, wow, this is really amazing. But it's heavy and it's dorky and it's expensive. I can't tell my family and friends to buy it. It's just not ready for them. There's not enough to do. So, but it does set up the next paradigm shift. I hope Apple gets there. I I think that, by the way, killing the car team actually helps the Vision Pro. I think next year when they come out with a second device, you're going to see a whole lot of new things that is capable with the second product because of the work that they did on autonomous cars. By the way, the autonomous car project brought us the M3, M1, M2 processor. 21% of that chip is AI inferencing and it's not being used. I have 3 of them in my house. That part of the chip is cold right now. It's not being used, and I'm one of the top AI influencers in the world. So I should in my house, that part of the chip should always be used. It's not. Well, why not? Well, that's what we're gonna hear about over and over and over. We're gonna see new kinds of AI capabilities that's gonna run in that part of the chip. And, Apple made that kind of investment. I used to work for Bill Gates as a strategist. Tried to talk him into buying Web2 stuff and spending $1 billion. He turned me down. He wrongfully so in hindsight, right? Same problem here. How does somebody talk Tim Cook into spending billions of dollars in semiconductor research and putting an AI inferencing engine into the semiconductor that's not being used in our homes yet? That's a huge investment. I think Apple could really take advantage of that investment and come out with some things that are really interesting, but we haven't seen it yet. So it's out there. It's an unanswered question. You're absolutely right, Omar. By the way, next to that chip is an ultra wideband radio chip. They really haven't turned that on yet either. That's a very
Omar,
capable new radio chip
yep.
that has a lot of new capabilities that hasn't been turned on. And I have 15 devices in my house that has that chip. Omar probably has even more devices that has that chip. Apple hasn't turned that network on. Why not? When are they going to do it?
Why not, Omar?
Are you talking about the ultra wideband?
Yeah, they've turned on piece of it, right? Because you can use Find Me to find a
Oh yeah,
device,
that's a really cool feature.
right? But there's a lot of capabilities to that chip that don't have to do with Find Me. For instance, it's 12 times faster than Bluetooth at sending data around. They're not using it. They're just starting to with the AirPods and the Vision Pro. You can get high resolution music for the first time. Why aren't they turning it on for everybody? They're so slow and deliberate about things that it's hard to be excited about the company at the moment. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I still use their stuff, but I think they need vision and leadership. And it's just incredible. Like, you're talking about the ultra wideband chip. So these chips allow you to see, I can see an arrow. Hey, your keys are over this way. And Apple had the foresight, really, they introduced so many technologies ahead of Vision Pro. They put these ultra wideband chips in our iPhones and in our AirTags so that we could sort of use them for AR, VR experiences. They started putting little simple LiDARs on the iPhone so that they could do distance measurements and start training different AI models. But even with all that, it just sort of is challenging without the right vision, right? So you can have all the money and all the resources, all the R&D talent, all the sort of millions of device sales in the world, but without vision, your company is not really going to grow. So I guess really what they need is maybe new leadership. Like they need a Satya Nadella. You look at what Satya Nadella did to Microsoft, and he completely revolutionized the company. And he completely revolutionized it by opening up the company, just completely changing the culture of the company. Programmers like me used to hate Microsoft. We're like, ugh, Microsoft, Windows, fuck that. I don't want to touch it. Give me my Mac. I'm going to develop for open source with Linux. I'm going to use the Mac's Unix. You know, I don't want that Microsoft shit. It's shitty. It's buggy. It's expensive. They make me pay for all the licenses. My open source software is free. And Microsoft completely did a 180 and they opened up and they said, you know, we're going to, for example, support open source. We're going to support Linux. We're going to actually release our apps cross platform. So we're going to release for both iOS and Android. And they completely changed the culture of the company. And they really embraced openness and the developer ecosystem. And Apple's really come under fire. You look at, Apple versus Epic, you look at these antitrust rules. And, I think they have to find a way to preserve their soul, preserve what makes their product special, but also kind of open up as well and employ some leadership that will return some fire to the company. I mean, this is the most exciting time in computing where we have AI literally revolutionizing, I think, the interface to every sort of tech product and service we use. And Apple should be one of the companies that's leading that charge to imagine what that future looks like, to design that future for us in a way that's elegant and Apple-like. But they're MIA. They didn't see this coming. So,
Well, they
yeah.
did see it coming. I had dinner 10 years ago with a guy who ran Siri. He told me back then, I asked him, what are you learning by being at Apple? Because Siri was launched in my house, right? So I know the three founders pretty well. And he's like, well, I'm learning that Google's beating us. And I'm like, why do you know that? Well, we instrumented Google and we instrumented ourselves. And their AI is learning faster. This was 10 years ago, was learning faster than our AI. We're going to have to rebuild Siri from scratch. It's been 10 years now. We haven't seen that rebuilt Siri. We're all waiting for it. The Siri team is waiting for it. The original founders of Siri know that it needs to be rebuilt, knew it needed to be rebuilt. Adam and Dag, who two of the co-founders, started a company called Viv and sold it to Samsung in that 10-year period because they were frustrated with Siri's advancement, right? And so I think Apple has one shot. It's this June. And if they don't deliver in June, I'm going to be joining your bandwagon of like, okay, we need to find an alternative to Apple because they're not able to innovate. No,
I mean, I'm not
I
moving off
already
Apple
know.
anytime soon.
No, but I'm watching the AI community, and there's a whole little team at Apple who's kicking out a thing called MLX, which is a new kind of infrastructure to run new kinds of AI workflows, and it's getting a lot of people excited. They've also shown off 3 new models, a small, medium, and large model, which people are playing with and are going, these are pretty competent models. So I think Apple is going to go from they're not there to holy shit. I'm expecting a big holy shit moment in June at WWDC. But if they don't deliver, there's other companies that are willing to step up to the game. I think Elon is one of them. He has AI that Apple doesn't have. Sierra's listening right now. She's on the X.AI team. Well, there's a whole team there who's trying to get a breakthrough to bring Grok and other kinds of AI technologies to our lives. Well, if Apple's not going to step up to the game, there's other companies who are willing to do that. And, we'll see where we are. But yeah, you're right. Right now, it's hard to defend Apple. I'm holding out until June. In June, I think we're going to have a different conversation. What if Apple open sourced all of its AI effort?
What
It's
is there to
actually
open source? I mean, one thing that Apple does
number
good with
one,
AI is their
give
chips.
developers access to the keyword Siri, right? When a user says, "Hey Siri, why can't I use a Mistral model or the model from News Research I had breakfast with today,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Grok, right?
Yeah.
Sierra's model. Why don't they open up the world of AI? There's no reason for them to be closed. It's not going to hurt any. In fact, if they open up that way, they would get more developers and more people to buy their devices than today. They would sell a fuckload more devices and get people excited about their ecosystem in a whole new way because developers would be able to do new things with their ecosystem.
Yeah, they really do need a cultural change that would allow for, external voice assistants or something like that that could integrate with the system. They've always been all about vertical control and doing everything themselves from top to bottom, but in order to pull off a strategy like that well, you need to be the best in each of those sort of verticals that you control. So, if Steve Jobs was alive, he would be probably putting the resourcing in, trying to recruit the top guys in AI to make sure that they were not only competitive, but among the best out there and, spending billions of dollars to do it. But I'm not sure that they really are. I mean, we heard a story out of Bloomberg this week that they're talking to Google about negotiating the use of their Gemma and Gemini models for some features in the new iOS. So if the company's changing and they're no longer able to sort of lead the industry in all these areas, then they should open up and allow people to use those technologies from other companies. And, they'll probably sell more devices for it.
I saw Marta thumbing down this move, this plea to open up. It'd be interesting to have Marta explain why she doesn't think that opening up would be a good thing.
I sent an invite to speak to, is this Marta Leal? Robert?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I would love to hear more debate on this topic.
Yeah, it'd be also as the Vision Pro evolves into a family of products. Well, let's talk to Marta because she's.
Hi, I wasn't thumbs downing opening up. I was thumbs downing the collaboration with Google. So I don't think that's a very good idea. That's all. So,
Why not?
I think Google has betrayed our trust as a society, and so I think, and that's just my opinion, of course. I don't mean it to have any larger meaning than that. It's just my own personal opinion. I think that Google has a lot to do to.
You're talking about the racial problem with putting black people on,
No, not that.
when
That
you
that
search for.
no, that was just absurd.